What's up everybody? In this video I'm going to show you how to properly handle your crested gecko or gargoyle gecko. So the number one thing that I tell people to keep in mind when you want to handle your crested gecko or any of your arboreal or jumpy geckos basically is to keep calm. I don't know why, but when people are freaking out, the geckos start to freak out. It's like they could sense it or something. Now, if you're keeping calm and you're, moving gently and you're not making any like skittish motions or like fast movements, the geckos are gonna remain pretty calm for the most part, and even a crazy gecko will learn that you don't mean any harm, and they will learn to slow down. The biggest piece of advice I could give you when you're handling these geckos is to hand walk them. The hand walking technique when it comes to handling is basically putting one hand in front of the other, just like this. Now, with leopard geckos or bearded dragons or some of the other lizards that you guys might have as pets, you don't have to worry about them jumping as much. But with crested geckos, especially the babies and the juveniles, they're big time jumpers. So that means that instead of putting your hand right here underneath them, you might want to put them out a little bit more, and right on cue, he jumps. So this is another thing I like to do especially when the gecko's a little bit more calm. I will kind of cup them like this and put my thumb in the back of their back. I'm not pressing hard or anything. I just kind of want to hold them in place. If he starts to like really struggle out, I'll just let go of my thumb, and that way he can move. But these guys enjoy to be, they enjoy to be basically walking around and exploring. Especially if you have geckos, you'll notice that if you just have them on your hand, eventually they'll keep climbing. Maybe they'll go up your arm, and eventually they'll make their way up to your head. Like I said in previous videos, these guys are arboreal, so they do like to be at a high point. They feel a lot more secure if they're up in the branches rather than down in the floor. Now, if he is down in the floor, like let's say in your cage or something, that doesn't mean your gecko's not healthy. Some do like to be in the floor, but for the most part, these guys are going to want to jump and climb up. So I'm going to show you guys how to handle an adult, a more skittish adult, and basically a baby, because the babies could be a little bit more jumpy and you do have to keep up with them. When you're handling the baby, you want to make sure that you're very aware of the surroundings. You don't want to have your cat laying around where he could just kind of swoop in and eat your little baby gecko. And you want to make sure that you're handling near a table or close to the ground. That way that if the gecko jumps off your hand, let's say you're standing up and it falls on the ground, it's not going to have that big of an impact. Now, these geckos are arboreal. They do jump in the wild and they are very clumsy. So if they do land on the floor, it's not the end of the world. It happens to us too. But you don't want them to take that impact all the time. You want to make sure when you're handling that you're not kind of pulling on the tail. If you have little kids, a little brother, little sister, you want to make sure that they're not going to yank on the tail, because as we know, crested geckos do have a prehensile tail that if they drop it, that's it. They're not going to have any more tails. They're not going to regrow their tail. So you got to make sure that when you're handling them, if they do still have their tail, you're not going to, pull them by their tail or yank them, or anything like that. Now, their tail can be used as another limb. As you can see here, they kind of hang from it, and what prehensile means is basically that they could use it as an arm basically. So when they're climbing, they'll use that tail to help them grip to branches. As you can see, with frequent handling, your gecko can become calm too. And this guy, he's pretty much like this, but I don't really handle most of my geckos because they are breeders and babies that I have for sale, and I have so many that I don't have time to handle all of them. But if you are consistent with the handling, and when I say consistent, I mean maybe handle 15 minutes, maybe start off with like 5 minutes, work your way up to 15 minutes, 30 minutes a day, and maybe like 3 times a week. I wouldn't handle every single day. I don't want to put that much stress on a gecko, especially if they're not used to it. But you also got to gauge the gecko. Some geckos are okay with handling, some are not. like I said, the grand majority of the New Caledonian geckos are very easy to handle, they tolerate handling very well, so you're not gonna have a problem. When you're handling the crested geckos, you know that basically wherever the gecko is facing, that's where they're gonna jump, or that's where they're gonna walk to. This guy's not gonna do a backflip this way. He's always gonna kind of go where he's facing. So you see he turns that way, then I'll put my hand over here. If he turns this way, then I'll put my hand over here. You just gotta kind of read the gecko, pay attention to your animal, and you should be fine. Now, the rule of thumb when you get a new crested gecko, or any animal for that matter, is to let them acclimate to their new surroundings for about a week or two, just until you see that they're eating regularly and they're pooping, because if they're pooping, it means they're eating. So after then you could start handling. So if I were to get a new crested gecko, I would leave him alone until I saw some bowel movements, until I saw he was eating. That's how I know the gecko's getting acclimated, and then I would start to handle. Like I said earlier in the video though, you want to work your way up. You don't want to start off by handling every single day for 30 minutes a day. It's going to stress the gecko out and it's not good for their health. So when you start off handling a gecko, maybe just start off 1 day a week, 2 days a week. Maybe you'll work your way up to 3 days a week and do short periods of time. Don't have it stressed out. Don't handle it with 50 people and in a room with loud noises, because that's gonna add a lot more stress to the gecko that it doesn't need to have, especially when you just acquired that gecko and you just moved it to a new home. Alright guys, that's gonna wrap up this video. I hope you found it useful. If you did find it useful, feel free to check out some of our other videos by subscribing, and follow us on Instagram, YouTube, obviously YouTube, Facebook, Snapchat, and Twitter. We're on all the social medias. And yeah, check out one of these videos. You might find them useful.